Are the Brits meddling in our election? That is what independent journalists Paul Thacker and Matt Taibbi revealed in their latest investigation. Kill Twitter was the headline of the to-do list of the Center for Countering Digital Hate. Now, this is an organization which is private but received some funding from the UK government. They outlined a list of accomplishments to make happen ahead of the US presidential election. Aside from getting rid of Elon Musk's X, other agenda items highlighted in the document include US policy engagement, strengthening relations with the current administration, and other officials like Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar. CCDH's founder and British political operative Morgan McSweeney is advising the Kamala Harris campaign. A think tank associated with McSweeney's group is diving headfirst into U.S. politics, teaching Harris and Tim Walz election strategy. Here to elaborate on the findings is investigative journalist Paul Thacker. Welcome to Rising.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Robby.
Yeah, great to be with you. Tell us what you found. Our viewers are somewhat familiar with the Center for Countering Digital Hate and the work they've done on what they describe as, misinformation, policing misinformation on social media. Explain how these groups are coordinating with Democratic political operatives.
So I just want to make one correction to your intro. We don't really know that they're taking money directly from the British government. And I think that's the real problem, actually, is that we don't know where their money's coming from. This is a dark money group. It has been from the very beginning when it started out in the UK. In about 2021, they jumped across the Atlantic. And I noticed them at the time because I cover corruption in science and medicine. And there was this report out called the Disinformation Dozen. And it alleged that there were 12 accounts on social media that were causing all the, what they called anti-vaccine misinformation. We know now that that report was totally false. Several of the media outlets that wrote those articles back in 2021 have corrected them in recent months. But what caught my attention was, how does this group I've never heard of jump out of the Washington babble? I mean, you guys know how many nonprofits there are in DC. I mean, I worked in the Senate. I mean, they're everywhere. How do you get the attention of the White House? And so I've been watching them now for about the last 2 years, and what I can tell you is that I've been speaking with several of CCDH insiders over the last several months. I've been given several documents, and one was their annual meeting, their monthly planning calendar, I guess is what you could call it, updates of what was going on in the monthly meetings. And the annual priority was kill Musk's Twitter. And the second agenda was advertising focus. And this is what Center for Countering Digital Hate has been doing from the beginning. There's a misconception back in the States that this group is focused on censoring conservative. That's false. They are there to censor anyone who gets in the way of, at one point in time, the conservative arm of the Labour government, which is now in charge of back in England with Keir Starmer. And since they jumped across the pond, we don't really have a left in the United States, right? We've got like Bernie Sanders, we've got the Squad. And so they've been focused totally on attacking any kind of potential enemy or critic or competitor to the DNC. So this is involved from the beginning, mostly attacking RFK Jr. And then going after anything that stood in the way of Biden administration policies.
Paul, I read through the piece this morning, and it's a fascinating long piece. Certainly encourage people to read it. But I just want to press a bit of a point. I mean, do you think it's really fair to say that this group is meddling in an American election? I understand that the founder is this sort of figurehead or Svengali within the British Labour Party. He's associated with this group, and he, through a separate but related think tank, is advising Kamala Harris. But do you think there's really that's enough to say there's a through line between this group's approach and the actual conduct of the American election?
Well, the chairman of the board of Center for Countering Digital Hate is a guy named Simon Clark. He was originally at the Center for American Progress, which, as you know, ran the Hillary Clinton campaign back in 2016. He's on a bunch of different groups that helped to push Biden's win in 2020. So I don't know. I mean, ask Simon Clark, I guess. Ask him, like, what's his agenda?
But I
right?
guess,
I mean,
I guess, no,
right?
sorry to cut across you. I mean, I guess my point is, like, we know and remember that back in, I guess, her primary campaign, Kamala Harris wanted or suggested that Donald Trump's account should be suspended from what was then Twitter. So, I mean, to me, it's not that surprising that she would have a more, whatever word you want to use, censorious attitude to social media anyway, regardless of what one thinks of the tactics of this particular group, no?
Right, but that's not the issue is what she wants. The issue is why is this group here? I mean, the chair of the board of the Center for Countering Digital Hate is a Democratic Party political operative, full stop, not up for discussion. So what is their job? I mean, it's very obvious what his job is to do. His job is to, be a surrogate for the Democratic Party, and that's what this group is doing. It's not that hard to understand.
Yeah, I found it really revealing that on their to-do list, the action item was so blatant, kill Musk's Twitter. Usually
Right.
these kinds of organizations, I mean, again, they say that the Center for Countering Digital Hate, they're using now kill, the verb kill. I don't mind people using colorful or inflammatory language, but they're usually these groups describe what they're doing as, we would like to reduce the spread of misinformation. We would like to reduce the spread of hateful language or racism on the platform. But here, behind closed doors, what they're saying is, no, we want to destroy this entire platform.
Right. There's not just that, but like the other sort of thing that you're hitting on is we hear it being called moderation. One of the action items, which you didn't report on because there's so much stuff in that one document, was to deplatform Libs of TikTok, which, as you know, Robby, that the group that Chaya runs, which is very much understood as a conservative sort of messaging machine. And what they wanted to do was deplatform, not to moderate, right? This idea of moderation is total nonsense. It's censorship. In a recent court case that Nina Jankowicz brought against Fox News, when the judge ruled, he actually went and read from the dictionary and said, here's what censorship is. So there's been this game of trying to pretend this is not censorship, that it's something else. You give it some other name, that this group is, it's not a political program. It's actually like a do-gooder nonprofit. Look, I don't mind if there's a do-gooder nonprofit out there that's trying to do this, or if there's a political campaign out trying to do this. But let's label these things as they are, right? I mean, there's a group that's run by the former Trump guy. I think it's called American First Legal. I think it's Stephen Miller's his name. No one looks at that guy as a do-gooder nonprofit. They understand that he's an arm of, the Trump agenda, and he's labeled as such. What the media has not done is label CCDH for who they are, which is a political campaign started by labor and passed off to the Democrats.
Yeah, I think that double standard is very key because, as you said, yes, there are partisan actors on the Republican side. They're carefully reported on. Their activities are described in major mainstream media. But then these other groups that are enacting a partisan Democratic agenda or are working to constrain the conversation on social media are described as fact-checking organizations or nonprofit journalistic projects, that sort of thing. And what we have seen in the past is a tremendous amount of, thanks to reporting by you and others, the tremendous amount of coordination by agents within our own federal government and these such groups. And again, I want to be careful. Specifically, can't remember what the level of engagement was between them and this group. I remember the Global Disinformation Index, which did receive,
Right.
which is a separate group that did receive some State Department funding and was also involved in these kinds of things. Do we know about what levels of conversations that might have been had with government agents on this topic?
Oh, they've been in discussion. So just to let you know, again, the conservative group, American First Legal, I'm labeling them effectively, correct, Robby? Robby
Yes.
is a conservative writer for National Review. Everyone knows that. He will be labeled as such if he was ever to appear in the New York Times.
Yeah.
We don't label these things on the Democratic Party side as such.
Yeah.
Right? Meanwhile, American First Legal released documents showing them meeting with multiple members of the Department of Health and Homeland Security. I think this came out like within the last year. And I've known for a long time what Imran Ahmed's background is. He was a staffer for a member of parliament from the conservative arm of Labor. His head of research, Callum Hood, also worked for a conservative member of parliament. who then went on and worked directly with Boris Johnson. And I don't mind if these things happen, but we need to label them as such and explain to people what's going on and not create this Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is now being quoted all over the media as a fact-checking organization, as a group looking to, like, fix hate. This is a group that has gone after, that has become an expert in anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-vax information, disinformation, misinformation, election integrity. And in every situation, the issues they choose to emphasize in Trump and the particular spin they tend to put on it just happens to coincide and quite frankly, nuzzles up very nicely with the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is.
Paul Thacker, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, guys.